You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Today on this very special Total Wellness Tuesday, we're going to be talking about leaky gut, what it is, and why so many people are talking about it. Now, the interesting thing is this. In natural health, the gut has always been talked about. It's always been the number one thing to look at when someone is not well. So it's just kind of funny that now in the media, for the very first time, we're talking about gut issues. We're talking about leaky gut and what it is and why it's affecting so many people's lives. So, in Ayurvedic time, 6,000 plus years ago, we talked about the gut, really nutrition, as the most important thing you could possibly look at when trying to get someone well, when trying to help them to lose weight, or when trying to help them live a long, healthy life. So now if we look back now a couple thousand years ago or so, we had all the initial forms of medicine then looking into it as well. And even Hippocrates said, all diseases begins in the gut. And so really, if we consider him the father of modern medicine and really what allopathic medicine looks at in terms of, taking the Hippocratic Oath and all of those specific things, we can say, well, why weren't we looking at the gut before? And the reason is that we just didn't know that much about it. And that's the honest truth. You can really speak with any MD. You can look at it in medical school. There's not a lot taught about your digestive system in the gut. Of course, we know how we digest food, but we don't necessarily know how the intestines work and what's extracted. So let's talk about it right now. Really simple crash course, 1 minute right now. So as the food moves down our esophagus, when we swallow it, it comes into our stomach. And then when it leaves our stomach a couple hours later, again, depending on what it is, if it's fruit or if it's just a little bit of starch, it'll pass within an hour, less than that if it's fruit. But if it's a more complex meal, like a typical lunch or dinner with, a combination of different foods, it will take a couple hours. Once that moves through the stomach, it moves to that thing called the gastric valve. That's the bottom of the stomach that pushes it through into the first part of the small intestines. Now, the first part of the small intestines is called the duodenum. Some people pronounce it the duodenum. But it's that first 10 inches or so, and that's where the bile drops and it meets the acidic food, and it helps just emulsify and rip open fats and break down all sorts of different food nutrients so that you can start to absorb it better. The pancreas also drops enzymes into the first part of the small intestine as well. Now, we hope that that part does its job, right? So we're not going to talk about that today, the digestive system. But what we're going to talk about now is it moves into the next 20, 23 or so feet of your small intestine. Remember, that's all around your belly button area. So if you ever get a little bit of pain around the belly button area, cramping, bloating, that's your small intestine. And then after that, it moves into about 5 or 6 feet of the large intestine. That moves through the ileocecal valve, which is just the last part of the small intestine, moving into your large intestine. And that actually goes up your right side towards your rib cage. Then it goes across right over your belly button, right above it, and then down your left side and then out of your body when you have a bowel movement. So it's that part that we're really talking about with leaky gut. We're talking about that. Let's say it's about 26, 27 feet or so. Okay, again, a little longer in very larger people, and then in smaller children, it will obviously be shorter. So what we're talking about now is what goes wrong in the gut. Why leaky gut? Well, what happens is after years, or I shouldn't even say years, but it can honestly happen after your first use of antibiotics. It can happen at birth when you just weren't provided a good natural maybe birth taking place, where you might have had a C-section instead of going down the vaginal canal, where you're going to pick up a lot of the good bacteria. You're going to swallow a lot of the good bacteria that helps build the gut. You may not have been breastfed. You may have had formula instead. You might have, again, had the history of antibiotic use. You could have had surgeries. You could have taken NSAIDs like Advil. You might have drinking tap water that has chlorine in it. All of those things, all of these things, birth control, they wipe out a lot of the good bacteria. And so what happens is we start to get this imbalance in our gut flora, or what's called intestinal flora. The flora just kind of meaning the bacteria or the terrain. And from that point, what can happen is this. We start to get a little bit of a breakdown in those little villi. Those are the finger-like things things inside of the 27, 28 feet of intestines. And believe it or not, all of those villi, really, so there's villi and there's microvilli, which are the even smaller hairs, the enterocytes on top. If you were to spread those out over an entire tennis court, just flatten out all the villi in the intestines, it would actually cover the entire tennis court. That's how prolific your gut is, and that's why it's so important. 70 to 80% of your entire immune system is in that gut lining, the small intestinal lining, large intestinal lining, as well as right outside in the mucosa. So, to be honest, you have to look at the gut no matter what disease we're talking about. And I want just in a moment, all the different diseases that can be related to leaky gut. So I want to give you a little test to see if you may be suffering from leaky gut. So what happens, though, is when we call it leaky gut, what we're saying is these villi may have been knocked down. They're called the blunted villi. Extra or the bacteria that we already have growing in our gut may have started to overgrow, like in the small intestine, or some of the large intestinal bacteria can move up to the small intestine. When the valves aren't working correctly, we could start to get parasites. We can get candida overgrowth. So we can get a lot of things that aren't normal in our gut. Basically, I always refer to it as a garden. If you have a just nice, fresh soil, if you don't plant the good bacteria, or in the garden case, if you don't plant the flowers, you don't plant the vegetables or fruit, whatever it might be, you're going to get the weeds to grow. And that's the big thing. If our flora is off, meaning like if we took antibiotics and it wiped out a lot of the bacteria, good and bad, a lot of the bad bacteria can actually start to overgrow. And that includes yeast and fungi as well, which is essentially the candida. And this happens all the time. We know about this in both allopathic and naturopathic medicine, of course. And the reason is they use nystatin and diflucan in allopathic medicine. And of course, we use natural formulas in natural medicine. So, but here's what happens. There's these things called the tight junctions. So this is the part we're talking about, tight junctions. There are these little, very, very thin breaks in the intestinal wall that are supposed to be there. Very, very natural, supposed to be there. And it's what allows all the smaller proteins to become and break down into amino acids, and the fats to become small fatty acid chains, essentially, and the carbohydrates to become sugars. And those can move through those tight junctions right now into the bloodstream. And our body can then say, the immune system can either pick them up and say, nope, these are foreign bodies, or it could then just pass them into the body and through the liver, and it can be used for good. Basically, amino acids can help build up the body, sugars can be used for energy or to be stored as liver glycogen, and fats the same for the nervous system, for your brain, all these great things. But what happens is those tight junctions can get larger. They get larger for all the reasons I just mentioned. Birth control, antibiotics, anti-inflammatories, all those things like the Advil, the chlorinated tap water, and again, many food combining, stress, there's so many different reasons, but those junctions can become larger. And what happens then is they allow larger molecules to move through. And a lot of times the worst is protein-based molecules. So what happens is when the protein molecules come by, the immune system starts to pick up on them, and that can actually turn the immune system up a notch, and it shouldn't be that high. And keep in mind, when 70 to 80% of your entire immune system is located right outside that gut wall, what happens is you could be on high alert. That can start to create a lot more inflammation in the body, because remember, those immune cells can actually go into the gut wall, and they can actually create inflammation right in the gut wall. They can create tissue breakdown, cause a lot of issues like in celiac disease, Crohn's, colitis, those are others, IBS. So now what we have is the bloodstream with foreign bodies, foreign invaders in it, and our immune system, again, is on overdrive, it's on attack. So a few signs that you actually might be suffering from leaky gut are things like learning issues or ADD. Those are big ones. Autism, executive function disorder I've seen. Any type of autoimmune-based issue. Hashimoto's and rheumatoid arthritis. Those are two of the bigger ones. Very well known for gluten molecules and other things coming through the gut wall. And IBS, anything like I just mentioned. IBS, Crohn's, colitis, celiac. Any one of those is a big, big one. Any skin issue whatsoever. Any skin issue. Whether it's acne, eczema, psoriasis, you name it, definitely tied to leaky gut. All sorts of different inflammatory bowel responses. So those are really big as well. Type 1 diabetes, again, type 1 diabetes, though, is typically considered autoimmune disorder, so it would fall within that as well. Any type of allergies, whether it's food-based or environmental-based, because again, that immune system is really high, being triggered. Asthma. So, I mean, I could go on and on. There's actually a very large list, but those are the main ones. But I would also say, I would put anxiety in that without a doubt, depression. Because again, if your body's on high alert, if it's stressed, it's going to be anxious because again, the nerve, the stomach, the gut, all of those things are sending signals to your brain that something's wrong. And it does that through the vagus nerve. So that's what we're looking at when we're talking about leaky gut. In a future episode, I will absolutely tell you exactly how I help people rebalance the body every single day in my practice. Half our digestive practice is literally dealing with digestive issues. It's one of the number one things, if not the number one thing you need to look at in terms of really repairing your body and getting your body back to 100%. I would find it very, very difficult to say that it's not possible to live a nice, healthy, happy life with lots of energy if you have gut-based issues. Because again, you're not absorbing your nutrients correctly. So let's forget about the autoimmune or the immune-based responses, the learning disabilities, the skin issues that go along with it. Let's talk about the fact that your body can't properly absorb, utilize, or make magnesium, all of your B vitamins, especially B12. But look at this other thing, that serotonin and a lot of your other neurotransmitters like dopamine and GABA, but especially serotonin, are manufactured in the gut. That means over 80% are actually made in your intestines. So we think about them going to our brain, but here's the thing, they're made in your gut. So what if your gut is faulty? What if it's not working properly? Well, not only can you not make serotonin, so that's kind of like the happy neurotransmitter, so we're looking at depression in a way that we should. And yes, we do have to look at it in terms of therapy and those types of things. I understand that. But it's so hard for people in therapy to get well without getting their body well. The two don't, your mind and your body do not operate separately. That's not the way it works. Your body is one systemic unit. So when we go to a specialist, that's great. But a specialist sometimes doesn't look at the whole body, which it really, they really should. And the other thing is this, that serotonin is a precursor to melatonin. So everyone with sleep-based issues, guess what? You need to say, well, why aren't I producing enough serotonin? And if I'm not producing enough serotonin, well, most likely something is wrong with my digestive system, my gut. So this topic's so important to me. It's something that I've talked about for, years and years, over a decade now. And it really is. It is the underlying root cause to so many different diseases out there. And only now is allopathic medicine and what we consider conventional medicine starting to put that together. And the crazy thing is, it's honestly, this is beyond belief to me, is that they won't run simple tests like an organic acid test to figure out a lot of these things. We run organic acid tests all the time in my practice. You can just go to stevencabral.com/store, see exactly what I'm talking about. An organic acid test looks for candida overgrowth, yeast overgrowth, fungal overgrowth. It looks for bacterial overgrowth, or if it looks at too little bacteria, it looks at energy function, mitochondrial function, serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine for energy. It looks at whether you're producing ketones or not, whether you're burning sugar properly. It looks at all of your B vitamins, looks at vitamin C. It is this amazing test. If you do a hair tissue mineral analysis and you do an organic acid test, those are my number one and number two. They're absolutely fantastic. You can tell more about a person with those two tests than anything else. And that includes your blood. Without a doubt, that includes your blood. So anyway, I'm, again, really passionate about the subject because it holds the answers to what's going on deep under why you're not feeling well, why you can't lose weight, all of these specific reasons. So I do hope you look into it more. Hopefully I did a decent job of explaining what leaky gut is, because that's what it is. It's these molecules coming through the gut wall that were never supposed to come out. One just last point here. Think of it this way. You have about a 28-foot tube or so from your mouth all the way out through your anus. So think of it this way. That tube is supposed to be like the skin on the outside of your body. It is supposed to be the outside of your body. And that tube is only supposed to allow the good stuff into the bloodstream, right? So that the liver can filter it as well, just making sure that it's all good. But here's the thing. If you have a cut, right, why do we wear a Band-Aid over a cut? We don't want to allow the bacteria from the outside world to get in. Well, guess what? When that tube has cuts in it, when it has increased permeability, leaky gut, that's the same exact thing. It allows outside foreign food substances or bacteria from our gut to seep into the bloodstream. That was never intended to happen. That is how we get sick. So I'm going to definitely follow up on this episode, giving you more details, but I can't just give you a 10-minute episode on how to cure leaky gut as well. It's not that simple. However, I will give you step-by-step exactly how to break it down, not only in a podcast, but I'll do a video, and I'll also do not a very long, but a good size post on exactly how to do it step-by-step. So that, again, I understand that I'm not going to be able to work with every single person in my practice, so it's my belief, my hope that I can pass this on to everyone out there, and then, of course, you can share it with others in need as well. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Are you ready to heal yourself and then go on to heal others? If so, the Integrative Health Practitioner Institute can help you discover proven functional medicine protocols that blend the best of 7 different healing disciplines from around the world. I personally share with you the exact handouts and protocols I use in my private practice that enable people to get well, lose the weight, and live longer, stronger. I want to pass this information on to the next generation of health coaches, and that is exactly why I created IHP. We are the future of the health coaching industry, and the skills and knowledge you will learn will make you an in-demand certified health coach anywhere in the world. Although we have many medical professionals taking the IHP certifications, no experience is necessary, and half our members have no previous health certifications. At the Integrative Health Practitioner Institute, our motto is a health coach in every home. Our goal is that you take this knowledge and then share it with family, friends, loved ones, your community, or in a practice where you create a career you love and can be proud of. The global IHP community is filled with some of the most kind and caring people in the world, and we can't wait to welcome you into our world soon. For more information or to set up a discovery call with one of our IHP Health Coach graduates, simply head over to integrativehealthpractitioner.org.